If you're a novice musician, you may have heard the word transposition floating around somewhere in your music circles. A lot of you have certainly encountered transposition at least once, and many of you probably even play transposing instruments. Wherever you fall along the musician's continuum, all of us have one question, and that question is, why? Just why? Why does transposition exist? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So what is transposition? Well, in music, we have assigned certain pitches certain names. So for example, this pitch, we have decided to call a C. And this pitch, we decided to call A flat. Wherever you go in the world, when you say these names, you're going to get those exact pitches. At least that's how it would be, except for transposition. Now, you may be familiar with transposition in the sense that you take a song or you take some sheet music, and instead of playing it in the key that it's written, you change it to a different key to make it more playable or maybe more singable. That is transposition, but that's transposition of notes to different notes so that you can play it in a different key. And that's not exactly what transposing instruments do. Now, using the analogy of a piano, if you were to play a C major scale on a piano, it would look and sound like this. And if you were to transpose that to the key of D major, it would look and sound like this. Notice you're playing on different keys than you were when you were playing in the key of C. Transposing instruments, on the other hand, act a little differently. Instead of playing a different note to get a different sound, it would be as if you opened up your piano, you retuned the whole thing, and so now, when you play a C major scale, instead of hearing this, you actually hear this. And if you have perfect pitch, I hope that hurt your soul. So when you play a transposing instrument, you read one note on the page, and you play that note, but the note that you hear coming from your instrument is actually a different pitch. Now, we call these written pitches and sounding pitches when we're talking about transposing instruments. Most notably with transposing instruments, when you play a written C, whatever sounding pitch you get from that is the name of your transposing instrument. For example, when playing a written C on a B flat clarinet, you will hear a sounding B flat. And this transposition of the pitch is true for every note in the entire range of the instrument. Since a written C sounds a whole step lower as a B flat, every single written note will sound a whole step lower on a B flat instrument. This means that if you play a melody in the key of F major, it will actually sound like it's being played in the key of E flat major, and so on. Now, the first time I ever heard about transposing instruments was back in 2016 in my sophomore year of high school while I was taking the music theory class. And I couldn't have been the only one who had this reaction, but I thought transposition was so dumb. What is the point? Like, is it so hard for instruments to play the note that's written on the page? Doesn't transposition introduce more complication? Well, that depends on who you ask. And if you ask me, it does. Okay, so what are these dumb instruments that have to transpose? And by the way, that's a joke. I don't think any of these instruments are dumb. I just used to think that transposition was dumb. And I still kind of do. The three main instruments that are transposing instruments in the orchestra are the clarinet, the horn, and the trumpet. But just because those are the only three main instruments that transpose in an orchestra doesn't mean that most of the instruments in the orchestra are non-transposing. Actually, almost all of the auxiliary instruments, the ones that aren't part of that main group or body of an orchestral section, we're talking a bass clarinet or an English horn, those are also going to be transposing instruments. Additionally, from what I understand, tubas are not transposing instruments, but they're kind of like the anti-transposing instrument, where you can get a B-flat tuba, for example, but it's called a B-flat tuba even though the note that you hear when you play a written C is a C and not a B-flat. So that's why I call it the anti-transposing instrument, because there are different variations of the tuba that are in different keys, but they don't actually transpose written pitches to different sounding pitches. And I'm sure I forgot something, so if I did, please let me know down in the comments. So now let's talk about why instruments transpose. There are two main reasons, and the first is to keep fingerings consistent throughout an instrumental family. So pretend you just learned the clarinet. You worked really hard at it, and now you're excellent at playing the clarinet. So you're going to rehearsal, and the instructor of your band or your orchestra needs someone to play the bass clarinet. Well, is it possible for you to play the clarinet? Without transposition, it wouldn't be possible without you learning an entirely new instrument. But because clarinet is a transposing instrument, you can play the bass clarinet in the same way that you play a B-flat clarinet, for example, and you won't have to learn any new fingerings. So, if you have a B-flat clarinet and you want to play a written C, you'll put your fingers in certain positions to play that C. Now, if you take that B-flat clarinet, set it down, and pick up, say, an E-flat clarinet, in order to play that same written C, you'll put your fingers in the exact same position as you would on a B-flat clarinet, and you would play written C in the exact same way. The only difference is this will sound as an E-flat instead of as a B-flat. We can keep fingerings consistent throughout families, even though the pitches that will be produced by those consistent fingerings will actually differ, but they'll be the same written pitches on every instrument. In this way, if you learn one of these instruments, you basically know how to play all of the other types of instrument in that family, and if you think that's cool, learn a woodwind, because they basically all do it. And the second reason why instruments transpose is to make their fundamental scale in the written key of C. Now, rarely do instruments sound very consistent throughout their entire range, and there's a portion of the range in most instruments that sounds the best, and we call it the sweet spot. A lot of writing is done in this sweet spot, in this range of that instrument, because it sounds the best. Instruments are also manufactured to be the right shape and size to make that sound the best in that range. Now, unfortunately, most of the time, this sweet spot is not centered around the key of C. But C is the easiest key to read music in. Now, the way that you can solve this dilemma is you can make instruments transpose, so that their best sounding tones are in the written key of C, even though they'll sound in a different pitch. This allows the reading of the music to be easy, and the sounding of the music to be better than it would be if it were to sound in the key that it's written in. A very obvious example of this is the horn. Now, the horn has a specific size and shape, and the length of pipe and the way that it's coiled makes the fundamental scale, the one that plays naturally when you don't push down any of the valves, the key of F. So what did composers do? They made the horn a transposing instrument. So when they read a C major scale, which is the easiest scale to read in, you hear the normal, natural scale that the horn plays in, which is the key of F. And finally, this makes reading in the treble clef a lot easier for many instruments, because that basic fundamental pitch that you play is at the bottom of the treble clef on a C, and you can go up from there. But you might be asking, why are we even trying to center any of these instruments on the key of C? Why does that make sense? Why should we be centering instruments on any key or any pitch at all? And if we are going to do that, why don't we do it in the key of A? Well, to answer that question, I suggest you check out this video by Music Corner. It's a pretty concise but thorough explanation of why it is the way it is. But long story short, originally all things were based in the key of A, but they were based in what we would say is the A minor scale today. And different modes were built upon this scale, starting on the different scale degrees in the A minor scale, and over time, Western music decided that the best sounding mode was the one that started on the third scale degree of this A minor scale, or the C major scale. And because the West decided this was the best sounding key, we decided to make C the center of our musical universe, and by extension make these transposing instruments play in the key that we like, and the key that we like to read in, which is C major. I hope you found this video enjoyable and informative. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on future content. There's also a booming comments section down there, so if you have any questions or any answers, don't forget to leave a comment. Otherwise, have a great day, and thanks for watching.